Positivism and post-positivism are two important paradigms in social science research. We will briefly discuss the difference between these two paradigms in the context of social science research. So, generally, a paradigm is a set of beliefs or values and certain assumptions that guide the process of research or the conduct of research and the aims of research. Generally, paradigms help us in the way we perceive realities, we generate or create reality, and the way knowledge or reality is validated. Paradigms generally have implications for the nature of reality, or you can say ontological implications for research. Similarly, paradigms have implications for the ways that we get knowledge, or you can say epistemological considerations of our research. And paradigms also have implications for the methods that we select for and validate for our research. So you can say the methodological considerations are also impacted by the choice of our paradigms as researchers. So generally we can say that paradigms overall guide the research process, the research designs, and in many ways the research aims and outcomes. That is why understanding of paradigms is an important you can say aspect of the process of research. Now, what is positivism? Positivism basically is based on the assumption that knowledge is derived from empirical, observable, and measurable facts. So positivists believe that authentic knowledge should be an outcome of an empirical process. It should be observable, and the knowledge that we get, or the ways in which we get knowledge, should be based on measurable facts. The emphasis of positivism basically is on objectivity, quantification of the social phenomena, and the use of the scientific method. Generally, positivism is associated with natural sciences, but in social sciences, when you replicate the processes of the natural science research, you can say you are following the positivist paradigm. Generally, the key features of positivism include that reality is objective. So there is generally an assumption that there is a single observable reality that we can measure objectively. Secondly, that the inquiry process should be value-free, and so the researcher remains detached, or should remain detached and neutral. Thirdly, that there should be hypotheses that are based on our observations, and the process of research should aim at testing those hypotheses. So you can say that there are hypotheses, and then there is a scientific method of collection of data, and then we deduce by analyzing data. There is a process of deduction and testing, and so hypotheses are tested through experiments and surveys. And lastly, generally positivists follow the quantitative methods of data collection and analysis, and so even the results are then presented in the form of numbers. So you can say that in this type of in research that follows positivist paradigms, data is collected numerically and analyzed statistically. Now here are some examples. For example, there could be a study on, and these examples are from the education field, from the field of education. That is generally my field, and I generally give examples from education. So if we conduct a study on school performance, where we collect data through standardized scores across schools, and then that data is statistically analyzed in order to relate that to teachers' qualification. So here you have two variables, teachers' qualifications and students' test scores or performance, and you are linking that through the process of, you can say, statistical data analysis. So this is an example of positivist, of a research process that follows the positivist paradigm. Similarly, an experimental study that we conduct under controlled environment to measure the comparative effectiveness of two different teaching approaches in terms of students' academic achievement. So you can say experimental research and quantitative survey researches are researches that generally lie in the positivist paradigm. Now, what is the post-positivist positioning or paradigm? So generally, the post-positivism has emerged as a critique and an evolution, or you can say a development of positivism, where the post-positivists assume that all observation, whatever we observe, is fallible and it is theory laden. In other words, observation, which is like the cornerstone of the scientific process of knowledge, observation itself, according to the post-positivist, cannot be totally done in an objective manner. And in many cases, our observations are theory laden, or they are based on or preconceived ideas and knowledge. And so thus absolute objectivity is unattainable as human researchers. The key features of post-positivism include critical realism. So what is critical realism? Critical realism is basically a belief that there is an external reality, okay, but acknowledgement that our understanding of that reality cannot be totally objective and detached, and so there are chances that our understanding of it or observations are imperfect and not entirely objective. Generally, the other feature of it is that researchers' reflexivity. There is always an influence of the researcher's own biases. Sometimes these biases, the researchers might not be aware of, consciously aware of those biases. But the researcher biases or their backgrounds, their perceptions, their conceptions definitely influence the researcher context and the way they conduct research or in the way they authenticate or validate their hypotheses or research questions. Thirdly, the post-positivists therefore take a more cautious position, and so they believe in the triangulation rather than in the absolute authenticity of only the scientific method or the objectivity or the quantification of social phenomena. Instead of that, they use multiple methods and sources to validate their findings. So, for example, the post-positivists might make a combination of quantitative data collection and analysis processes and qualitative data analysis and collection and analysis processes in order to come up with more authentic findings. So here are examples of the applications of post-positivism in research conduct. So, for example, a post-positivist might study student achievement by combining test scores with interviews. So they conduct tests in order to achieve in order to find out student achievement, and then they can combine that with interviews of students and teachers in order to understand the contextual factors and not just the teaching methods objectively. So what are the various factors that have actually influenced or impacted student achievement? Secondly, we could also have a triangulation study where data based on questionnaires and interviews with students and teachers, and also we could get data through observations of classroom interaction to understand student-teacher relationship in specified educational institutions. So what are the factors that impact student-teacher interaction or relationship in particular educational institutions. Here, the researchers are combining several methods, including both qualitative and quantitative, in order to find out more nuanced answers to, or to have a better and deeper contextual understanding of the phenomena, that is student-teacher relationship. So they are collecting data through questionnaires, but they're combining it with interviews and with teachers' classroom observations. So you can say the post-positivists believe in the end justifies the means rather than the importance of the means. So this is the fundamental difference between the positivist position that you can say is a more purist position, and the post-positivist that is based more on pragmatism and the end justifies means position.